But all it takes is a signature from the Department of Energy to allow them to enrich this uranium. The Defense Department has written statements saying that they could use this uranium. The GAO has said that this would bring back, and this is the best use of this waste product. But I believe that the Secretary of Energy, through a stroke of the pen, could save these 1,200 jobs, and that's what I'm asking for help with.
Well, Madam President, let me just indicate to my colleague from Kentucky that I'm encouraged to hear that this is an action that could be taken without any cost to the taxpayer. That I think is obviously an important thing. I don't know all the arguments for and against the action that the Senator is advocating here or requesting, but we certainly will look into that. Let me ask one additional question, if I could, Madam President, and that is whether if we are able to accommodate the Senator from Kentucky with regard to this request he has made to the Secretary of Energy, is that the only objection he's aware of to the approval of these 5 nominees, or are we going to have additional senators coming to the floor raising additional objections in the future, even if this action is taken?
Senator from Kentucky.
Madam President, this is my only objection, and if the Senator were to help me save these 1,200 jobs, we'd erect a monument to you in Kentucky. This is a big deal for us, and it doesn't cost anything, and I will do everything within my power to make sure there is no objection on our side. I think it is the President's prerogative, and I will help facilitate this process as soon as possible. This would be a huge thing for us in Kentucky if we could save these jobs.
Well, Madam President, obviously I don't want a monument erected to me in Kentucky, but I do appreciate the Senator from Kentucky indicating his commitment to help get these nominees approved if some accommodation could be found for his concern. As I say, I have no knowledge of this particular issue, and I don't know whether this is the request that the Senator from Kentucky is making is within the realm of possibilities or not. But we will certainly go as far as to investigate the issue and try to get a response back to the Senator as to what the Department of Energy's view on this issue is. And that much I can certainly commit to the Senator from Kentucky. But I appreciate his willingness to discuss the issue here on the Senate floor, and I also very much, as I said before, appreciate his commitment to help us get these nominees approved if some accommodation of his concerns can be agreed upon. Madam President, I yield the floor. I suggest the absence of a quorum unless one of my colleagues wishes to speak. If I withhold that request.
Madam President.
The Senator from North Dakota.
I rise to speak on the issue of energy security for our nation. I filed the legislation, which would approve the Keystone XL pipeline. I filed our bill as an amendment to the highway bill. That bill is the Hoeven, Lugar, Vitter, McConnell, Johans, Hatch bill, but it actually includes 45 senators as sponsors of the legislation. As I said, I filed it now as an amendment to the highway bill. The fact is that Congress needs to act. The administration, after more than 3 years, has decided not to act, evidently won't act on this important issue, so we in Congress need to. This highway bill provides a tremendous opportunity. The highway bill is about infrastructure, vital infrastructure for our country, and that's exactly what the Keystone XL pipeline is. It's vital infrastructure that's very much needed by our country. Look at gas prices today. According to the Lundberg survey or AAA, gas prices are now more than $3.50 a gallon. That's the highest they've been at this time of year ever. More than $3.50 a gallon. Since President Obama took office, gas prices are up 88%. They're up 88%. Now, that's even though demand is down. We're using less. Demand in the United States for gasoline is down by 5%. Yet we're seeing record high gas prices. AAA is now projecting that gasoline will go to $4 a gallon by Memorial Day. $4 a gallon by Memorial Day. And some analysts are saying that we could see $5 gasoline this year, $5 a gallon. Well, why is that? Why is that? All you have to do is look to the Middle East to understand what's going on. With the turmoil in the Middle East, Iran is threatening to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. Something like between 1/5 and 1/6 of all the oil, all the seaborne oil in the world goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So you can imagine what would happen if Iran blockaded that strait. So why are we continuing to get oil from the Middle East and places like Venezuela? Nearly 30% of the crude that we use comes from places like the Middle East and Venezuela. Well, why is that? Why are we doing that when we don't have to? We don't have to. Why not produce that oil here in this country? Why not get it from our closest friend, our strongest trading partner, Canada? The reality is we can have North America energy independence. We absolutely can do it, and I believe we can do it within the next 5 years. In my home state of North Dakota, we now produce 535,000 barrels a day of light sweet Bakken crude oil. 535,000 barrels a day. But the problem we have is we can't get it to market. In the last 5 years, we've increased production from about 100,000 barrels a day to more than 500,000 barrels a day, and it's continuing to grow. But we need pipelines to get that product to refineries in the United States. That's what the Keystone would do. More than 100,000 barrels a day of our oil would go into the Keystone pipeline so that we could get it to refineries. And Canada, 700,000 barrels a day of oil from Canada would go into the Keystone pipeline as well. So we're talking about 830,000 barrels a day of oil that would flow through the Keystone XL pipeline that we then don't need to get from the Middle East. Between the United States and Canada, with some help from Mexico, building infrastructure like Keystone XL, we can produce more than 75% of the crude oil that we need in our country. And that's growing. So when I talk about North American oil independence or North America energy independence, this is very attainable. This is something that we absolutely can do, but we need the infrastructure to do it. Today, in North Dakota, light sweet Bakken crude is suffering a discount of $27 a barrel. So our oil is suffering a discount of $27 a barrel because we're constrained by pipeline capacity. In Canada, Syncrude, coming down from Canada, is suffering a discount of $21 a barrel because of that pipeline capacity. Even in Cushing, Oklahoma, a hub for oil in this country, oil there is being discounted because it can't move to the refineries because we lack the pipeline capacity. But even with these bottlenecks that I pointed out, even with these bottlenecks and these discounts at the pump, consumers and businesses are paying more than $3.50 a gallon. The bottlenecks create those constraints. So think of the impact on our economy. Think of the impact to our consumers. And there's other impacts as well. There's other impacts as well. For example, in North Dakota, we have more truck traffic on our western highways than ever before. That means more fatalities, more traffic accidents. It also means a lot more wear and tear on our infrastructure. So here we are talking about a highway bill to maintain and improve our highway infrastructure throughout the country. And in my home state, our roads are getting worn out by all that truck traffic. Keystone XL pipeline alone would reduce the truck traffic on our highways in just North Dakota by 17 million truck miles a year. 17 million truck miles a year. And all of that without one penny of government spending. Not one penny of federal government spending. So a $7 billion private investment in enhancing our infrastructure that won't cost us one penny, but instead return hundreds of millions to local, state, and federal government. A project that will provide needed infrastructure, tens of thousands of jobs, more energy security for our nation, millions in tax revenues with no government spending. And in fact, The U.S. Department of Energy has said the Keystone XL pipeline will lower gas prices. Not may, will lower gas prices for the East Coast, for the Gulf Coast, and for the Midwest. But the Obama administration says no. So the Canadian Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, he goes to China last week. Well, he's there in China. He met with President Hu Jintao of China about selling oil, about selling Canadian oil to China. Prime Minister Harper said, and I quote from the Gazette, quote, "We are, talking about Canada, we are an emerging energy superpower. We have abundant supplies of virtually every form of energy. And you know, we want to sell our energy to people who want to buy our energy." It's that simple. He also spoke of a new era in strategic Canada-China energy partnership. And to the United States, he said, if you don't want Canadian sand crude, China is a waiting customer. So if you don't want our oil, China's a waiting customer. And to back it up, he returned from China with a MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding to develop energy sales from Canada to China. So for those who don't think that the Canadian oil sands are going to be produced, that's wrong. They're going to be produced. This oil will be produced. The issue is whether it's going to go to China or come to the United States. And the reality is, if it goes to China, it will be worse environmental stewardship. If it comes to the United States, there will be better environmental stewardship. Let's talk about that for a minute. First off, if it comes to the United States in a pipeline instead of going to China, you don't have to haul it across the ocean in tankers. Those tankers produce greenhouse gas. So the oil going to China creates more greenhouse gas because you have to haul all of it to China. Second, if we're not getting it in a pipeline from Canada, we're going to have to continue to have tanker loads of oil come into this country from the Middle East and from Venezuela, again producing more greenhouse gas. Third, we have the best refineries in the world. We have the highest standards. We have the lowest emissions in our refineries. So instead, this oil goes to refineries in China where you have higher emissions, more greenhouse gas. So the reality is you create worse environmental stewardship by sending it to China, not better. Another important point, 80% of the new production in the Canadian oil sands is in situ. 80% of the new production in the Canadian oil sands is in situ. That means drilling and using steam, putting steam downhole to bring the oil up, drilling like you do with conventional oil, not excavating like they've done historically, but drilling that has the same emissions, or in situ that has the same drilling, same impact, or the same greenhouse gas emissions as conventional drilling. So 80% of the new development is in situ with the same impact as conventional drilling. And you know, that's the real solution. The real solution is using technology to not only produce more energy, but with better environmental stewardship. That's the real solution. And it means jobs and energy independence for North America. And finally, on this issue of re-exporting the oil, the issue's been brought up that, okay, if we bring the oil in from Canada, then the oil's just going to get exported to some other country, not be utilized here in the United States. 99% of the crude in the United States is refined in the United States. 99%. 97% of the gasoline refined in the United States is used in the United States. 90% of all the transportation fuel refined in the United States is used in the United States. We need this oil. We need the refined products. And the reality is, for the small amount exported, think about that. For that, we get jobs and we get dollars for our economy. Think about it like manufacturing for just a minute. Refining is a process. You take crude oil, you refine it, you have a finished product, refined product. That's like manufacturing. You take your inputs, you manufacture, you have a finished good. Now, would anyone for a minute argue that we don't want to manufacture things in the United States and send them overseas? Of course we do, because we get jobs and wealth from that, don't we? In other words, we want to manufacture and we want to process goods in the United States, and when we export them, we get value. We get jobs here, and we get a growing economy. So what's going on with this argument? If you think about this argument in the simplest form, for those that say, well, geez, we don't want to build the pipeline here because some product might get exported, let's stop and think for a minute. If you don't build the pipeline, all of the oil goes to China. None of it comes here. None of it. So we're worried that some might get exported? Makes no sense. None. Well, I'll wrap up. The reality is this. Whether you measure it by jobs, whether you measure it by energy security for this nation, really national security with what's going on in the Middle East, whether you measure it from an environmental stewardship standpoint, it absolutely makes sense to develop this infrastructure. This is an important step in the right direction towards North American energy security. There's a lot more we need to do, but the reality is we can get there with this kind of private investment by creating the right environment for that private investment. The infrastructure, the steps we need to take, we can get to North American energy security, and it's time for Congress to act. It is time for Congress to step forward. This is vitally important infrastructure for our country, and this is a vitally important step in terms of national security for the American people. Thank you, Mr. President, Madam President, and I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
The Senate continues in a quorum call. The pending business is the judicial nomination for the 11th Circuit in Atlanta, though it is likely that the Senate at some point this week is going to move on to the transportation bill, depending on how they resolve the request by Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky for an amendment that deals with the Americans who are being held, Americans working in the non-governmental organizations. The senator from Kentucky introduced that amendment last night, and Democrats are opposed to bringing it up. Meanwhile, in the House, they will have a series of votes coming up at 6:30 as several suspension bills. They are likely to take up a transportation bill, their version of the transportation bill, on Wednesday, and we will have live coverage, of course, for you. The Senate, or rather the House, comes in tomorrow at 10 o'clock for general speeches, and they will start legislative business at noon, and that's live now. The House is live now on C-SPAN.
Senator from Arizona.
Thank you, Madam President. Are we in a quorum call at the moment?
We are.
If so, I ask unanimous consent that further proceedings of the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. On behalf of Senator McCain and myself, I am pleased today to introduce the Navajo Hopi Little Colorado River Water Rights Settlement Act of 2012. This is Senate Bill 2109. It is propitious as the state of Arizona today celebrates its centennial, its 100th birthday, that we also have the opportunity to resolve significant water rights issues for the Navajo Nation, the Hopi tribe, and water users throughout the Southwest. Indeed, the legal arguments for the claims being settled predate Arizona's induction into the Union. It's also worth noting that for more than 2 decades, more than 20% of Arizona's statehood time, hundreds of individuals in Arizona and here in Washington have worked hard to settle all of these claims. The protracted and at times contentious negotiations are a reflection of water's fundamental importance, as well as the care and attention communities in the Southwest have given to managing this very limited resource. For many on the Navajo and Hopi reservations, however, management of the resource is nothing more than a mirage. It shocks the conscience that in this day and age, many on the Navajo and Hopi reservations only have access to the amount of water they can haul, in some instances literally by horse and wagon, to the remote reaches of the reservations. While this picture of conditions near Dilcon on the Navajo reservation could be confused as a depiction of conditions at the time Arizona became a state in 1912, Madam President, this photograph was taken in just August of last year. And you can see that it depicts, as in many other areas of the reservation, between a third and a half of the households lacking complete plumbing facilities and many families being forced to haul water significant distances. That's what you see depicted on this photograph, and it's become a way of life on the reservation, a full-time job that limits economic opportunities and perpetuates a cycle of poverty. What's more, this lack of clean, readily available drinking water significantly impacts the health and safety of Navajo and Hopi people. There are higher rates of disease and infant mortality, and there is a lack of sufficient water supplies to meet fire suppression needs. It is inconceivable that in 2012, Navajo and Hopi families are still living in these conditions. Legally, the Navajo Nation and the Hopi tribe may assert claims to larger quantities of water, but as seen here, they do not have the means to make use of those supplies in a safe and productive manner. Among water law practitioners, the tribes may be said to have paper water as opposed to wet water. Those claims are far-reaching, extending beyond the mesas and plateaus of northern Arizona and calling into question water uses even in California and Nevada. The legislation we introduced today, however, would resolve many of those issues. In exchange for legal waivers, the Navajo Nation and Hopi tribe would receive critical drinking water infrastructure. The 3 groundwater projects contemplated by this act would deliver much-needed drinking water supplies to the impoverished areas of the Navajo and Hopi reservations. It is also important to note that this settlement would facilitate water deliveries to the eastern part of the Navajo reservation through the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project, a project that has not only been approved by Congress but was one of 14 projects chosen by the President in October for expedited environmental review and permitting. Although the expedited project may deliver 6,411 acre-feet of water to Navajo communities in Arizona, such deliveries cannot occur until the Navajo claims in Arizona have been resolved. This settlement accomplishes that goal, reallocating water for delivery through the Navajo Gallup pipeline. Importantly, this settlement would not only inure to the benefit of the Navajo Nation and Hopi tribe, but it would also provide immeasurable benefits to non-Indian communities throughout Arizona, California, and Nevada. Without a settlement, resolution of the tribe's claims would take years, require parties to expend significant sums, create continued uncertainty concerning water supplies, and seriously impair the economic well-being of all of the parties to the settlement. For example, municipalities, farmers, ranchers, and industrial water users in northern Arizona would be able to better plan for their water future without the uncertainty and expense of continuing costly litigation against the tribes. Likewise, water users from the Imperial Valley of California to the Las Vegas Strip would be able to take comfort in the knowledge that lower Colorado River water management regulations that they spent years developing will no longer be subject to challenge by the Navajo Nation. In addition to resolving the tribe's claims to the Little Colorado River, this settlement sets the table for future negotiations regarding the lower Colorado River. The settlement, among other things, reserves water for future negotiation of those claims. In doing so, the bill acknowledges the importance of those settlement negotiations to the tribes and the non-Indian communities throughout the Southwest. I've had the privilege to work on a number of water settlements throughout my career. Each has been rewarding and served to meet significant needs for both the American Indian and non-Indian communities involved. In that same regard, I'm pleased to have had the opportunity to work with the many parties that have negotiated this settlement, and I'm committed to bringing it to fruition through congressional enactment. I believe this bill represents the best opportunity for all of the parties and for the American taxpayer to achieve a fair result. The settlement resolves significant legal claims, limits legal exposure, avoids protracted litigation costs, and most importantly, saves lives. Therefore, I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and as we move forward with the request for hearings that we will need to hold, and hopefully after that bringing this legislation, after properly marking it up, of course, to the floor of the Senate, Senator McCain and I will have much more to say about how the settlement came about, what its importance is to the people of Arizona, describing the legal consequences of it, and what it means to the future of my state. I'm particularly pleased that all of the parties in Arizona, literally hundreds of people, came together to reach an agreement that we could then embody in legislation that I could introduce on the day of Arizona's birthday, its centennial, its 100th birthday, as another event, another very important event in the history of our state. I think it would be a fitting birthday present to the people in the state of Arizona if our colleagues will help us in ensuring that this legislation can be adopted in this centennial year. And so, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that this statement and the text of the bill be printed in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
The senator from New Hampshire.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know this comes as no surprise to you, but today is Valentine's Day. Today, millions of Americans are buying flowers and candy for their loved ones to celebrate Valentine's Day. This is an important day for American businesses, especially candy manufacturers. Consumers will purchase over 36 million heart-shaped boxes of chocolates for Valentine's Day. But unfortunately, the price that American candy manufacturers must pay for the sugar leaves a very bitter taste in their mouths. Why, you ask? Well, because these companies face artificially high prices for sugar, about twice the world average. That's because there is an outdated and unnecessary government program that keeps sugar prices significantly higher than they should be. It's programs like these sugar subsidies that reflect people's frustration with what's going on here in Washington, because the sugar program, like too many other subsidies, protects special interests at the expense of regular businesses and consumers. That's why I joined with Senator Mark Kirk on Valentine's Day last year to encourage our colleagues to join us in supporting our bipartisan Sugar Act. The Sugar Act would phase out the U.S. sugar program, which costs businesses and consumers about $4 billion a year. This is a big concern for us in New Hampshire, where we are the American home of Lindt chocolate, as well as a number of other smaller candy companies that use a lot of sugar. I know it's a concern for the President, who has Hershey's chocolate in his home state of Pennsylvania. It's a big concern for Illinois, where Senator Kirk is from, because they have so many candy companies. And this legislation isn't about Democrats or Republicans. This legislation is about ending a bad deal for businesses and consumers. Senator Kirk and I sponsored this legislation because we need to end the sweetheart deal for the sugar industry. There is simply no reason to continue a program that makes candy makers, bakers, and other food manufacturers in our states pay double the world average price for sugar. One of the other fallouts from these high sugar prices is that it costs jobs. For every one job that we save in the sugar industry because of these subsidies, we're losing 3 manufacturing jobs. Today, as we celebrate Valentine's Day, my thoughts are with Senator Kirk, who continues to recover from a serious illness. And while Senator Kirk couldn't be with us here this Valentine's Day, I do wish him well, and I look forward to his speedy return to the Senate. I know that he's focused on getting better so that he's going to be able to get back here to work for his constituents from Illinois. It's been my pleasure to work with Senator Kirk on this bipartisan legislation. I look forward to our continued work in the future on the Sugar Act and on other matters that help our constituents in New Hampshire and Illinois. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Earlier today, President Obama said that Congress needs to act quickly on the payroll tax cut extension. Senate and House negotiators are working on a compromise to extend the cut through the end of the year. It currently expires at the end of this month. The legislation also includes extended unemployment benefits and higher Medicare reimbursement rates for doctors.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Everybody, please have a seat. Well, good morning, and let me start with a quick public service announcement for all the gentlemen out there. Today is Valentine's Day. Do not forget. I speak from experience here. It is important that you remember this and go big. That's my advice. You know, lately I've been saying that this is a make or break moment for the middle class in America and for folks who want to be in the middle class. You know, we face a choice. We can settle for a country where a few people do really, really well and everybody else struggles just to get by. Or we can restore an economy where everybody gets a fair shot and everybody's doing their fair share and everybody's playing by the same set of rules. And that second option is, I strongly believe, the kind of America that we want for our kids and our grandkids. That's who we are. That's the America that we believe in. That's what we have to roll up our sleeves and get back to doing, is creating an America where everybody's doing their fair share, everybody gets a fair shot, everybody's engaging in fair play. And we're still fighting our way back from the worst economic crisis in our lifetimes, and we've still got a lot of work to do and a long way to go. It's going to take time to recover all the jobs that were lost when the recession was at its depths. But the fight is beginning to turn our way. Over the past 2 years, our businesses have added over 3.7 million new jobs. Our manufacturers are hiring more new workers to make more new things here in America than at any time since the 1990s. So our economy is growing stronger. And the last thing we need, the last thing we can afford to do, is to go back to the same policies that got us in this mess in the first place. The last thing we need is for Washington to stand in the way of America's comeback. Now, first and foremost, that means Washington shouldn't hike taxes on working Americans right now. That's the wrong thing to do. But that's exactly what's going to happen at the end of this month, in a couple of weeks, if Congress doesn't do something about it. The payroll tax cut we put in place last year will expire. The typical American family will shell out nearly $1,000 more in taxes this year. You'll lose about $40 out of every paycheck if Congress does not act. And that can't happen. Not now. And it doesn't have to. Congress needs to extend that tax cut along with vital insurance lifelines for folks who've lost their jobs during this recession. And they need to do it now, without drama and without delay. No ideological sideshows to gum up the works. No self-inflicted wounds. Just pass this middle-class tax cut, pass the extension of unemployment insurance, do it before it's too late, and I will sign it right away. Now, the good news is, over the last couple of days, we've seen some hopeful signs in Congress that they realize that they've got to get this done. And you're starting to hear voices talk about how can we go ahead and make this happen in a timely way on behalf of the American people. That is good news. But as you guys know, you can't take anything for granted here in Washington until my signature is actually on it. So we've got to keep on making sure that the American people's voices keep breaking through until this is absolutely, finally, completely done. Until you see me sign this thing, you've got to keep on speaking up. until you see that photograph of me signing it at my desk, don't, make sure it's verified, certified. If it's not on the White House website, it hasn't happened. And I'm going to need to make sure that your voices are heard. Last December when we had this same fight, your voices made all the difference. We asked folks to tell what it was like, what it would be like if they lost $40 out of every one of their paychecks. Because we wanted to make sure that people understood this is not just an abstract argument. This is concrete. This makes a difference in the lives of folks all across the country in very important ways. Tens of thousands of working Americans flooded us with their stories. And some of them are here with me today. And their feedback's been pretty unanimous. Allowing this tax cut to expire would make people's lives harder right now. It would make their choices more difficult. It would be $40 less for groceries to feed your kids. It would be $40 less for the medications you depend on. $40 less to cover bills and the rent. $40 less to take care of an elder parent or to donate to a church or a charity. And when gas prices are on the rise again. Because as the economy strengthens, global demand for oil increases, and if we start seeing significant increases in gas prices, losing that $40 could not come at a worse time. One local entrepreneur named Thierry, where's Thierry? He's right here. He told us that $40 would cover the gas that gets him to his day job, or alternatively, the internet service that his small business depends on. So he'd have to start making a choice. Do I fill up my gas tank to get to my work, or do I give up my entrepreneurial dream? $40, he wrote, means a heck of a lot. Means a heck of a lot. And that's what this debate is all about. This is what's at stake for millions of Americans. This is why it matters to people. It matters a heck of a lot. And I'm asking the American people to keep their stories coming. Tell us what $40 means to you. If you tweet it, use the hashtag $40. Call, tweet, write your congressman, write your senators. Tell them, do not let up until this thing gets done. Don't let taxes go up on 160 million working Americans. Don't let millions of Americans who are out there looking for work right now, and the economy is starting to improve, but they don't have a job yet. Don't leave them without a lifeline in terms of cutting off their unemployment insurance. When a plane is finally lifting off the ground, you don't ease up on the throttle. You keep the throttle on full. You keep going. And our plane is up there, but we're not at cruising altitude yet. After all, extending this tax cut and the unemployment insurance is the least of what we should be doing for working Americans. It's just a start. We need to rebuild an economy where middle-class folks can focus on more than just getting by. And folks who want to get in the middle class have those ladders to get into the middle class. We've got to rebuild an economy where the middle class thrives and more Americans have a chance to earn their way into it. An economy built to last. Yesterday I released a blueprint for how we get there. It's a blueprint for an economy built on new American manufacturing and new American energy sources and new skills and education for American workers and a new focus on the values that are the bedrock of this country. Values like fairness and responsibility for all and from all. We're going to be better off if we start building that economy right now. And we can do it because we've done it before. We have a common challenge. It's time for us to meet it with a common purpose and to show a sense of seriousness that's equal to the task. So on behalf of all the hard-working Americans who are standing behind me, I want to thank you for helping to tell your story and tell the story of why this is so important. And I just want everybody all across the country to keep the pressure up so that we get this done. It is going to make our economy stronger, and it's going to put us in a position where we can start really rebuilding on behalf of not just this generation, but future generations. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless. God bless America. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.